When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I still remember that moment very clearly. I was standing near the kitchen door, holding a warm cup of tea that had already gone cold in my hands. My smile was quiet and polite, the kind you give when you don't want anyone to see your heart breaking. She did not shout. She did not use harsh words. She spoke softly, almost kindly. That hurt more than anger ever could. She said, "Ma, I think it's better if you stay somewhere else for a while." Her voice was calm, like she was talking about the weather, like she was not asking a mother to step out of her own son's life. I nodded slowly. I even said, "Of course." Inside, something very old and very fragile cracked without a sound. I had raised my son alone, from the day he first opened his eyes to the day he walked out holding another woman's hand. I had given him my time, my strength, my youth, and every dream I quietly let go of. And now I was being asked to leave like I had never belonged there at all. That night, I lay awake on a thin mattress in the guest room. The house was silent, but my mind was not. Every small sound felt louder than it should have. The ticking clock, the distant hum of a fan, my own breathing in the dark. I kept asking myself one question. When did I become invisible? I was not always this quiet woman who avoids eye contact and keeps her feelings folded deep inside. There was a time when my laughter filled small rooms, a time when my hands were always busy and my heart was always hopeful. That was before life taught me how quickly everything can change. My name does not matter much. In every story like mine, the names are different, but the pain feels the same. I am a mother. That is the only name that truly defines me. My son was born on a rainy morning. The sky was gray, and the hospital room smelled of medicine and wet earth drifting in through a small open window. His father was not there. He had left months before, saying he was not ready for responsibility. I never saw him again. From that day on, it was just the two of us. I worked small jobs. Some days I stitched clothes for neighbors. Some days I cleaned houses. Some nights I stayed awake worrying about school fees and doctor visits. But every morning when my son smiled at me, I felt rich in a way money could never give. We lived in a small home, 2 rooms, 1 kitchen, walls that heard all my prayers and all my tears. I cooked simple meals, but I cooked them with love. I walked him to school every day. I waited outside when it rained. I clapped the loudest at school events, even when other parents stared. I was mother and father, teacher and friend, all in one tired body. When he fell sick, I did not sleep. When he failed an exam, I encouraged him gently. When he succeeded, I felt like the world had opened its arms to us. He used to hold my hand tightly when we crossed the road. "Ma," he would say, "don't let go." I never did. Years passed quietly. He grew taller. My hair grew thinner. Time moved forward, as it always does. When he told me he wanted to get married, my heart felt 2 things at once: pride and fear. Pride because I had raised a man. Fear because I knew my place in his life would change. I met his future wife only a few times before the wedding. She was polite, well-spoken, always smiling. She touched my feet respectfully and called me Ma. Everyone told me how lucky I was. "Your daughter-in-law is so modern and educated," they said. "She will take good care of you." I believed them. I wanted to believe them. After the wedding, I moved into their home. I did not want to be a burden. I told myself I would stay quiet, helpful, invisible if needed. At first, things were fine. We shared meals at the dining table. We talked about small things, the weather, groceries, work schedules. But slowly, something shifted. My daughter-in-law began to correct me often. How I cooked, how I folded clothes, how I spoke to my son. She never raised her voice. She smiled while doing it. I told myself she was adjusting. Marriage is not easy. Living with elders is not easy either. So I stayed quiet. If she wanted the kitchen at certain hours, I stepped back. If she wanted privacy, I stayed in my room. If she looked uncomfortable when I spoke too much, I stopped speaking. My son noticed some of it, but he was tired from work, busy building his own life. I did not want to add to his worries. I told myself this was the price of love. A mother learns to step aside. But I did not know then that stepping aside would slowly turn into being erased. Life after the wedding settled into a routine that looked peaceful from the outside. Every morning, I woke up before sunrise. Old habits stay with you, even when life changes. I swept the floor quietly, made tea, and sat by the window, watching the street wake up. My daughter-in-law liked things done a certain way, her way. I respected that. After all, it was her home too. At first, her requests were small. "Ma, please don't keep the spices there." "Ma, I preferred the cups arranged like this." "Ma, it's better if you rest more." Her words were gentle, but there was something underneath them, a firmness that did not leave room for discussion. I nodded every time and adjusted myself. I began to feel like a guest who had stayed too long, even though my son had asked me to live with them, even though I had nowhere else to go. During meals, conversations slowly changed. They talked about office matters I did not understand, trips they wanted to take, friends I had never met. Sometimes I tried to join in. I would say a sentence or two. My daughter-in-law would smile politely, then look at her phone. Silence slowly became my safe place. My son still spoke to me kindly, but not like before. He listened less. He was always in a hurry. I told myself this was normal. Children grow up. Lives become busy. Still, some nights I felt a strange heaviness in my chest, a feeling I could not name, like standing in a room where the air was slowly disappearing. One afternoon, I overheard something I was not meant to hear. I was in my room, folding clothes. The door was slightly open. Their voices came from the living room. "She interferes too much," my daughter-in-law said softly. "She doesn't mean to, but still." My hands froze. I stood still, holding one shirt. My son replied, "She's old. She doesn't realize." Old. The words sat heavily in the air. "I just want my own space," she continued. "I didn't imagine married life like this." There was a pause. I held my breath without realizing it. "I'll talk to her," my son said finally. I quietly closed my door. My heart was beating fast, but my face felt numb. That evening, my son sat beside me. He did not look into my eyes. "Ma, maybe you can relax more. You don't need to do everything." I smiled. I always smiled. "Yes," I said. "You're right." I did not tell him what I had heard. I didn't want to create distance between them. I believed silence could protect love. Looking back now, I see how wrong I was. From that day, I began to disappear little by little. I stopped cooking unless asked. I stopped offering advice. I stopped sitting in the living room when they were home. My world became my small bedroom. A bed, a chair, a cupboard full of memories. Sometimes I looked at old photos. My son as a child, missing teeth, smiling proudly. My son holding my finger as a baby. I wondered when he stopped holding on. The first real pain came during a family gathering. Relatives came over for a festival. The house was full of noise and laughter. I felt hopeful that day. I wore a simple sari, combed my hair carefully. I wanted to look presentable. In the kitchen, I tried to help. My daughter-in-law stopped me gently. "Ma, please sit with the guests," she said. "I'll manage." I nodded and moved away. Later, while serving sweets, she introduced everyone. Her parents, her cousins, her friends. When it came to me, she said, "Oh, she's my husband's mother." Not Ma, not family, just a description. People smiled politely. Some nodded. I felt something sink deep inside me. That night, after everyone left, I cried silently into my pillow. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to let the pain breathe. I told myself not to take it personally. People forget words. People make mistakes. But deep down, I knew this was not a mistake. Small comments followed. "Ma, you don't need to wait for us." "Ma, we already ate outside." "Ma, it's okay if you eat later." I began eating alone more often. The dining table felt too big, too empty. Sometimes my son would notice and say, "Ma, why didn't you eat?" I would smile and say, "I wasn't hungry." That became my answer for everything. One evening, it was raining heavily. The sound of rain filled the house. I love the rain. It always reminds me of new beginnings. I was sitting near the window when my daughter-in-law came in. She sat across from me. "Ma," she said, "can we talk?" My heart tightened, but I kept my face calm. "I think it's better if we set some boundaries, for everyone's comfort." I nodded slowly. "You're used to doing things your way," she said, "but this is my home now." Her words were polite, but the meaning was sharp. "I understand," I replied quietly. She smiled, relieved, as if a problem had been solved. I sat there long after she left. The rain continued to fall, but something inside me felt very dry. That night, I realized something painful. I wasn't being treated badly in obvious ways. There was no shouting, no cruelty people could point at. Instead, I was slowly being pushed to the edge, softly, politely, until there would be no space left for me at all. And the hardest part was this. My son was standing right there, but he did not see it. After that conversation about boundaries, I became careful in a way I had never been before. Every step I took in the house felt measured. Every word I spoke felt heavy. I was always afraid of saying too much or doing too little. I began waking up even earlier, just so I would not disturb anyone. I cleaned quietly and stayed out of sight. Some days, I did not speak a single sentence until evening. I told myself this was maturity. This was sacrifice. This was what good mothers did. But inside, I was shrinking. My daughter-in-law started making decisions without telling me. Small things at first. Furniture was moved, the old photos on the wall were taken down, the corner where I used to sit was turned into a storage space. One day, I noticed my son's childhood pictures were gone. I asked softly, "Where did the photos go?" She replied easily, "I packed them away. They didn't match the decor." Decor. A small word, but it erased years of memories. I did not argue. I never argued. Then came the changes that hurt more deeply. She began planning family events without including me. Birthday dinners, outings, even simple temple visits. I found out about them after they returned. "Oh, we didn't think you'd want to come," she would say. "You seem tired these days." Tired. Yes, I was tired, but not of living. My son slowly stopped sharing things with me. I learned about his job change from a neighbor. I learned about their travel plans from social media. I felt like I was watching my own family from behind a glass wall, close enough to see them, too far to reach them. One evening, I gathered courage. "Ma can feel lonely sometimes," I told him gently. I did not accuse. I did not cry. He sighed, a tired sigh. "Ma, please don't overthink it," he said. "Everything is fine." That sentence ended many conversations after that. Everything is fine. The real shift happened when my health started failing. Nothing serious at first. Dizziness, weakness, body aches that stayed longer than before. I tried not to make it noticeable. I did not want to be another inconvenience. One afternoon, I fainted in the kitchen. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the floor. My daughter-in-law stood nearby. Concern showed briefly on her face. "Ma, you should take care," she said. "You're not young anymore." My son took me to the doctor. He was worried that day. I could see it. The doctor advised rest, proper meals, less stress. For a few days, my son checked on me often. He brought me medicine. He asked if I had eaten. Hope slowly returned, but it did not last. As soon as I felt better, things went back to how they were. Quiet distance, unspoken rules. One night, I overheard another conversation. "She depends on you too much," my daughter-in-law said. "It's not healthy." My son replied, "She has no one else." There was silence. "That's exactly the problem," she said. I sat on my bed, holding my knees close to my chest. I felt very small, smaller than I had ever felt before. From that day, her behavior changed. She became polite, but distant, formal, as if I was a responsibility she was learning to manage. She stopped asking if I had eaten, stopped telling me where they were going, stopped including me in plans completely. One evening, she said calmly, "Ma, it might be good if you spend more time outside, maybe with relatives." I understood what she meant, but I pretended not to. "Yes," I said, "I'll think about it." The house no longer felt like home. It felt like a place where I had overstayed. I missed my old small house, the cracked walls, the familiar silence. Even the loneliness there felt kinder. Sometimes I wondered if raising my son alone had been my mistake, if my love had been too much, if my presence now felt like a shadow they wanted to escape. These thoughts scared me, but they stayed. One afternoon, while folding clothes, I found a document on the table. Property papers. My name was not there. I stared at the pages for a long time. I did not fully understand them, but I understood enough. The house had been transferred. Decisions had been made without me. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. Not anger, not shock. Resignation. That evening, I waited for my son. When he came home, I handed him the papers. "Is this true?" I asked quietly. He looked uncomfortable. He avoided my eyes. "Yes, Ma. We thought it would be simpler this way." Simpler for whom? I did not ask. I already knew. That night, I did not sleep. I sat by the window until dawn. The sky slowly changed color, just like my life had, without asking me. I knew then that something final was coming. I could feel it in my bones. The silence was no longer protecting anyone. It was preparing me for goodbye. The day everything finally broke did not begin with anger. It began like any other quiet morning. I woke up before sunrise, as always. The house was still asleep. I made tea and sat alone at the dining table, watching steam rise from the cup. I remember thinking how peaceful everything looked. Peace can be very misleading. Later that morning, my daughter-in-law asked me to sit with her. Her voice was calm, carefully calm. "Ma," she said, folding her hands together, "we need to talk about something important." My heart knew before my mind did. My son was sitting beside her. He looked tired, avoiding my eyes. She continued speaking, slowly and clearly, like she had practiced. "Things have been difficult lately," she said. "With work, responsibilities, stress, it's becoming hard to manage everything." I listened quietly. "I think it would be better if you stayed somewhere else for some time, maybe with a relative, or in a quiet place where you can rest." Somewhere else. Not home, not here. I looked at my son. I waited for him to speak, to say something, anything. He cleared his throat. "Ma," he said softly, "this is not permanent, just for a while." For a while. Words that sounded gentle, but carried no promise. I nodded slowly. I felt my lips curve into a small smile. "Of course," I said, "if that's what you both feel is right." Neither of them looked relieved. Neither of them looked guilty. They simply nodded. And just like that, my place in the house disappeared. I packed quietly that afternoon. A few clothes, my medicines, old photographs I had hidden in my cupboard. No one offered to help. No one stopped me. As I folded my saris, memories unfolded with them. My son running through the house as a child, his school bag lying in the corner, his laughter echoing in the rooms. I did not cry, not then. Crying would have made it real. When I walked out of the room with my bag, my daughter-in-law stood near the door. "Take care, Ma," she said kindly. "I'll call you." I nodded. My son stood near the gate. He hugged me briefly, awkwardly. He said, "I'll come see you soon." I smiled again. "I know," I replied. I always replied with belief, even when belief had left me. I went to stay with a distant relative, a small, unfamiliar place, a room that smelled different, walls that did not know my story. They were kind enough, but kindness is not the same as belonging. Days passed slowly, very slowly. No calls came, no visits. I told myself not to expect anything. Expectation only brings pain. Still, some nights I kept my phone close, just in case. One afternoon, I went back to the house to collect a few things I had forgotten. I informed them before going. The door opened, but the house felt different, colder. New curtains, new furniture, no sign of me. It was like I had never lived there. My daughter-in-law walked past me, busy with her phone. My son was not home. I went to my old room. It was empty. No bed, no cupboard, nothing. Just a clean, silent space. I stood there for a long time. This was the moment I finally understood. I was not being asked to leave for rest. I was being removed. Quietly, completely. That evening, as I was leaving, my daughter-in-law said something that stayed with me. "You know, Ma," she said, "every family needs space to grow." I nodded, but what she did not say was this: some families grow by cutting away the old. I did not confront them. I did not argue. I did not beg. I had already lost. Instead, something inside me went quiet. Very quiet. That quietness was not weakness. It was acceptance. For the first time, I stopped waiting to be chosen. Life became very small after that. Not in a sad way at first, just quiet, very quiet. I woke up each morning in the borrowed room where I was staying. The ceiling fan made a soft clicking sound. Sunlight came in through a narrow window and rested on the floor for a while, then moved on. I began to notice small things again: the sound of birds outside, the warmth of tea in my hands, the slow passing of time. No one needed me there, and for the first time in my life, I did not need to be needed. That realization felt strange, almost frightening. For years, my worth had been measured by how much I gave, how much I endured, how much I stayed quiet. Now, there was no one asking anything from me. Weeks passed. My son called once, just once. "How are you, Ma?" he asked. "I'm fine," I replied. He paused, like he was waiting for me to say more. I didn't. "That's good," he said. "We've been busy." "I understand," I said. And I truly did. After the call ended, I sat for a long time holding the phone in my hand. I did not cry. I felt something else. Closure. I slowly began to rebuild myself in small ways. I took morning walks. I joined a nearby temple group. I spoke to women my age who carried stories like mine in their eyes. We never compared pain. We simply listened. Sometimes I cooked meals just for myself. Simple food, the kind I used to make when my son was small. Eating alone no longer felt like punishment. It felt peaceful. One evening, while cleaning my bag, I found an old letter my son had written years ago. He was a teenager then. "Thank you for never leaving me," the letter said. I smiled softly. I had kept that promise, even when others did not keep theirs. I thought about my daughter-in-law often, not with anger, not even with blame. I realized she did not wake up one day wanting to erase me. She simply wanted a life that felt fully hers. And in her world, there was no space for an old mother who reminded her husband of a life before her. Understanding this did not excuse the pain, but it softened it. Months later, I heard through relatives that they were expecting a child, a grandchild. For a moment, my heart stirred. Then it settled. I whispered a small prayer for the child, for them, for myself. I did not reach out. Some bridges are not meant to be crossed again, not because we cannot forgive, but because we finally learn to protect our peace. I no longer wait by the phone. I no longer expect footsteps at the door. I have learned something very important. Being erased from someone's life does not erase your worth. Being left behind does not mean you failed. Sometimes it simply means your chapter in their story is over, but your own story is still being written. If you are listening to this and you feel forgotten, if you gave everything and were still asked to leave, please remember this. Your love mattered, your sacrifices mattered, and your life still matters, even in the quiet, especially in the quiet. I raised him alone. I loved him fully, and even though I was erased from his daily life, I did not erase myself. That is where my strength lives now.